President Barack Obama says overcoming poverty requires both strong families and a strong economy. Speaking at Georgetown University, Mr. Obama said that political debates over poverty often get hung up over the role of government, families, and religious institutions. The president said, quote, "I think it's important when it comes to dealing with the issues of poverty." Take a look.
I also want to emphasize we can do something about these issues. I think it is a mistake for us to suggest that somehow every effort we make has failed and we are powerless to address poverty. That's just not true. Concentrations of wealth can lead to some being left behind. I think it's important for us to recognize there is a genuine debate here, and that is, what portion of our collective wealth and budget are we willing to invest in those things that allow a poor kid, whether in a rural town or in Appalachia or in the inner city, to access what they need, both in terms of mentors and social networks, as well as decent books and computers and so forth.
We are back live on set now here at Fresh Outlook. I am joined by the Fresh Outlook think tank, Stevan Lynn, a fatherhood expert and coach, Dr. Bart Rossi, a clinical psychologist, and David Goodman, team leader of the Central New Jersey Committee of Represent Us. And David, I'm going to start with you, give you a loaded question.
Okay.
I don't believe that much poverty exists in America. I think a lot of people pretend to be poor in order to get their benefits.
Well, let me just say this, Logan. I think we'll discuss this today, but what we really need to do is take an expanded view of what's happening in this country. What the president just said a moment ago about the concentration of wealth, I don't want to pass over that too lightly, because that's the key point. The political roots of the widening inequality of this country really is the context in which we have to talk about poverty today, because it's not only the decline in the traditional views of poverty, but it's the decline and the disappearance of the middle class. You have increasing numbers of people who are working 1, 2, maybe 3 jobs, and yet they still have to go to food pantries in order to make ends meet in terms of meals. We are talking about an entirely different definition of poverty than was the case when Lyndon Johnson started his Great Society program.
Right, because now people who are poverty-stricken have cell phones, they drive cars, they have big screen TVs. They don't seem all that poor to me. I'm going to bring it to you, Coach Lynn. Do you agree with me on some level that there are governmental incentives now to stay poor?
Well, not necessarily stay poor, but possibly stay on easy street, if you will.
Right.
Not really aspire to have different things, to have a home.
To want more.
To those things, exactly. Some of the things that as we were growing up were taught to us. Listen, you want to move better than where you are now. You want to do better than your parents did, or have more things. But
and also there was a shame growing up. You would not take a handout. You would not take charity. You would not take help from the government. My parents were poor. They rented rooms in the house, and they wouldn't even send me to public school because they thought, you know, you pay your way. You go to Catholic school in my situation.
Yes. Well, you hit it on there. Your parents too. You know, times have changed. Statistics show that a lot of the particularly poor neighborhoods, rural and urban, are predominantly women-held households. Yeah. And you know, my premise is without the father there, without that leader there, that support service, that push, that motivator for you, you're not going to still try to reach for the same types of things because mom is carrying the load. She's the one with 2 or 3 jobs.
But society is constantly telling us we don't need dads. Anything's a family nowadays. Single motherhood is fine. 2 women are parents is a family. 2 men are a family. Anybody's a family nowadays. So we've got this whole culture out there who are attacking fathers, in my opinion.
Well, they're wrong. Father is needed, and the statistics show that clearly. The social ills, the stagnant communities that we have, the impoverished communities, it's on a different level now of no hope of ever getting out. There was a time where we always had that dream of, while my father might have been poor and we were poor, we didn't have nothing.
Right.
Me as a child, I didn't know that because we always had that hope.
And you also had the pride.
Exactly. But now, with the fathers not being involved in the community and not being involved in the home, It's just we're at a crutch, if you will.
We're going to talk more about the role of dads in just a second. I want to get Bart in on this conversation. You heard a lot of what I said. I don't think poor people are as poor as they pretend to be in some cases. I think there are legitimately poor people there, people who can't make it no matter what. They need a helping hand. They need to be protected by society. As Ronald Reagan used to say, I believe in safety nets for the truly poor and the truly needy. I feel a lot of people out there are getting a free ride, like Coach Lynn said. What are your thoughts, Bart?
Well, to your point, I think we could do a much better job on personal responsibility. There is something to say about rugged individualism and people making it on their own. However, I think the president's right, really. There are a lot of people who work hard. They work 40, 50 hours a week, and they don't make a lot of money. I mean, I was in the nursing home business. I saw the nurses work. I saw the CNAs, the certified nurses assistant. They don't make a lot of money. But it seems to me, and the president went on to criticize Fox because they only want to talk about how hard the 1% work. Well, the people on the bottom work hard, and they don't make enough. And a lot of these folks on the bottom are going to do better ultimately because they have some personal discipline. Okay, we get that. But there are a lot of folks who are disabled. There are people coming back from the military. Over 3 million of our veterans have post-traumatic stress. Guess what? They're not going to get a job.
That's
I can
truly
tell you.
poor and truly needy, like I
They're not
said
going to
about.
get jobs because they're not
Absolutely.
going to function.
Right.
So we have a lot of people out of 330-some million here in this country. There are a lot of millions of people who are really not functioning that well. They have mental health problems, they're disabled, and we have kids on food stamps. There's a lot of government stuff, as the president said, does help, and it helps bring people up. But you know, if somebody doesn't have any bootstraps, how do you pull them up? So there's two sides to this. There's your side, which I do agree with, personal responsibility. Yeah, we need to accentuate that, but we also need to help people who want to help themselves.
Well said. David, I'm going to toss it to you. Do you think the government has a role in this, that the government can help, that the government can level the playing field?
Well,
I don't see that role. I don't see how government can help.
I know that, and you and I have some nice and interesting differences of opinion on this,
Right, which makes it
is important. You know, I think what we need to say, Logan, is that we are living now in the second decade of the 21st century in the second Gilded Age. The first Gilded Age was in the 1890s, where you had robber barons and trusts and so forth. You had an economy that was totally tilted against working people in the middle class, and that's what we're dealing with today. And it's incredible how we're repeating history, because what was happening then was that people were being blamed for their own poverty as a moral failing. It's got nothing to do with a moral failing. The fact
It can in many
Well,
cases. They can be using drugs, they can be using alcohol, they could be promiscuous, they could be doing a number of lifestyle choices that is adding to the poverty.
The bigger issue is the lack of opportunity and the fact that the deck is stacked against people who are working and in the middle class. The 1%, which is really less than 1%, have rigged this economy. Corporations, Wall Street, the ultra wealthy have controlled the government. So to come back to your question, can the government do anything? Absolutely. Is it going to do anything under the current situation? No. And that's why, as you know, from my organization, we're working on grassroots levels to build up a support structure, which is happening around the country, that's going to be able to say to the Congress, we've got to make changes. You guys might not be able to do it because you're in tow with large financiers in the corporate world. But what we don't have is money, but what we have are huge numbers, and those numbers are going to become known increasingly over the coming decades.
We'll talk more about that. Coach Lynn, I know your expertise is fatherhood and the role of fathers. In fact, I read an interesting statistic that said that if you look at black married couples, their incidence of poverty is extremely low. It's in the single digits. Where you see a lot of the poverty are in the single mother households where there is no father.
Yes.
Why are fathers so important? For me, that's a redundant question. I think they're as important as mom in many cases, particularly maybe more important as the kids mature. And tell me what you're doing as a parenting coach, as a father coach, to help out.
Well, the father is the backbone. He's the structure, the provider, if you will, on many fronts, not just financially, emotionally, spiritually. He's the protector. We personified the streets, and all of us have understood how the streets, even in the rural areas, will come up and step in his shoes if he's not there. So he is the one there that keeps the kids away from harm. But more importantly, he's the one that's going to lead by example. And when we're having these communities where nobody is working, you know, everybody is on food stamps, everybody is living in the projects, or everybody is living in the extremely rural areas, trailer parks, if you will, and we see no male figure there that's leading the way through example, it perpetuates the problem. And once again, we've seen this poverty, this issue of poverty, and it's been around forever. It's nothing new to some of us. We were broke since day one.
Right.
However, it seems to be on another level now where there's no way out. And that's where we're really working with the fathers now to answer your question on teaching them how to do it through deeds, not words. We're now reaching back to the fathers all across this country on all walks of life, even those that have money, and letting them know that you have a responsibility. You've been blessed with this opportunity to make sure that the next generation can do better, not necessarily with more things, but a heavier conscience. They don't have to live in poverty because of you. You have a heavy hand on that. And if you do not do it the right way, which we teach them the right way to do it, once again through deeds, not words, you are condemning your kids to an extremely difficult life.
Exactly. That condemnation I was going to talk to Bart about, it's interesting. If you grew up in a household where there was no father and your parent, it becomes cyclical, it becomes generational that, dad's just not around. Dad's just a guy who comes by every now and then and might drop off some money.
That's right. And where are the values? And how do you get personal responsibility? And how do you go in the right direction?
How do we also balance the new pull of society away from traditional values and then still have traditional values? Because what you guys are all saying is you need a strong family, and I think you've got so much of popular culture out there saying, you know what, you can do it on your own, you don't really need a dad.
That's going to be very hard without a dad. It's going to be a real problem.
I know.
But to get back to what Obama was saying, and I do agree with what you're saying, is that what troubles me the most, and I'm going to take a very conservative point of view on this, is I see people who are working 2 jobs and they're making $29,000. They're working for Walmart. They're working 45, 50 hours a week. They still qualify for food stamps. So my tax dollars are now going to help Walmart make more money, make more billions. So I think that there is a lot that government can do, a minimum wage that makes sense. We don't have to give money to people. How about they earn a decent salary so they're not going to qualify for food stamps, so then I don't have to have my tax dollars go for food stamps.
Look, when my
There's
kids
a lot of things could do.
Well, when my kids were starting out, we would do the math. We'd say, when you're leaving suburban New Jersey to go into New York City to do your minimum wage job, you've made absolutely nothing. By the time you pay $15 across the George Washington Bridge, $7.50 or whatever, $13 to cross another bridge, buy lunch, park, that's your day's wages. I mean, so there is a real problem.
You're in the hole.
Tell me the name of your organization, how people get in touch with you.
DeedsDrivenDads.com. Deeds Driven Dads. That's our motto.
Okay, sounds great. And the name of your organization?
Represent Us. It's representus.us.
And people want to get in touch with you, Bart, how do they do it?
brossi.us is my website.
Okay, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at a scandal that involves cheating, Deflategate. We'll look at the psychology of it as well.